75,000, and for the past 2 years, according...
Now, just leave that there because the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, is campaigning with the Liberal candidate for the seat of Wentworth, Dave Sharma, in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Let's take a listen in.
To Australia, and he has become an ambassador for Australia. He's very passionate about this electorate. And just the other day, we were at Centennial Park, where it was placed on the National Heritage List, which was long overdue. So, Dave, I wish you all the very best here in Wentworth. This by-election is very important. It's very important because there is just a one-seat majority in the Parliament. And a vote for the independent is as good as a vote for the Labor Party, which will put at risk our economy and bring uncertainty to the Parliament. Tomorrow, I go to Bali for a G20 meeting of finance ministers. I'll be taking two messages. First, that the Australian economy is strong, having grown 3.4% through the year, having our AAA credit rating reaffirmed, and having produced the smallest budget deficit in a decade. The other message I will take is that the trade tensions between the United States and Australia can't get out of control. To date, there has been little macroeconomic impact, as it's been confined to about 2% of world trade. But Australia is a big exporter. It supports nearly 1 in 5 Australian jobs. It supports our farmers, it supports our factory workers, it supports our professionals, and it supports our tourism and education industries. So my message to my fellow G20 finance ministers will be that free trade equals more jobs, free trade equals more investment, and free trade means higher economic growth. Dave?
Thank you, Treasurer. Well, it's great to have you here in Wentworth. I'm sorry about the weather, but I don't think it's dampened our enthusiasm for talking to small businesses and, as you said, talking about our vision for Wentworth. It will be a very close by-election and, we're not taking anything for granted. But a lot depends on this by-election. It's not just who holds the seat of Wentworth, of course, but it's the uncertainty that a loss of this seat would create in the National Parliament in Canberra.
Great. Any questions?
How unhelpful was the release of the Ruddock report just before the Wentworth by-election, which suggests that students could be discriminated against?
Well, the first thing I'd say is it's a report to government, not a report by government. It is yet to be considered by Cabinet. So as the Prime Minister has said, we will respond in a considered way once it has been properly looked through and discussed at Cabinet level.
Should the federal government endorse the idea?
Look, again, you're jumping the gun. The report hasn't even been considered by Cabinet. We'll wait for that proper process. But one thing you can be sure of is that we'll always get the balance right and we'll always do what is best for the Australian public.
But surely you have a personal view, Mr. Frydenberg.
About
the idea of discriminating against allowing private schools to not accept, say, gay children.
Well, Scott Morrison made it clear in his earlier remarks this morning. There are existing laws that allow for that to happen in certain circumstances. We're not proposing to change the existing laws, and I haven't heard Bill Shorten talk about changing the existing laws.
Can I ask Mr. Sharma, would that be in breach of Australia's international human rights obligations?
Well, I'll just say on this, on a personal level, I mean, I would be opposed to any new measures that impose forms of discrimination on the basis of gender or sexual orientation or anything else for that matter.
Thanks.
Can we ask then also about population? The Premier of New South Wales today said that she would push for a halving of the immigration levels to New South Wales. What's your position on that?
Well, as you've seen from Alan Tudge, the Minister for Population, in recent days, he made a significant speech, and there is no doubt that our population has been increasing quite dramatically. We're adding a city the size of Canberra each and every year. Melbourne is growing by 2,700 people a week, and 75% of the increase in population in the last 5 years has been in our capital cities. Now, this is creating real challenges particularly around important transport services and the congestion in our cities. That's why we have a Minister for Congestion Busting in Alan Tudge. That's why we have assigned more than $1 billion to this role. This is why we're rolling out $75 billion worth of infrastructure projects across the country. And we are now looking at how to ensure that people who come as prospective migrants to this country spend time in smaller states and in regional areas where there are jobs and which it could be a great benefit to them and also to the economy. So what we are focused on is ensuring that Australia manages the changes in population to the best possible effect, and we are working through a number of options for government.
Is Gladys Berejiklian's proposal appropriate? She wants to halve the number of immigrants coming to New South Wales. It's not just about moving them to the regions, it's significantly lowering the number that actually come to the state. Well,
what I'd say to Gladys Berejiklian is we stand ready to work with you to invest in the necessary infrastructure to ensure that this state, this great state of New South Wales, has the right services and the right infrastructure to support the population that it has. Now, when it comes to the number of permanent visas to this country, they've fallen to the lowest level in nearly a decade. So we are taking steps to ensure that our population numbers are properly managed, but we do so in a way that supports the economy and supports the community.
So you won't consider cutting immigration?
You can ask. Sorry?
So you won't consider cutting immigration numbers? Is that right?
Well, what I've said is the number of permanent visas have come down quite significantly. We are a very proud migrant nation, and it's pretty apt that I'm standing here with Dave Sharma. His family is a migrant success story. Mine is. My mother was born in Hungary, and my grandparents were born in Europe, and they came to Australia as stateless people, and this country created an enormous opportunity. So from me, you'll always hear a positive word about immigration, a positive word about multiculturalism, but that's different to the issue about managing population growth. And it's fair to say governments, state and federal, over the years could have done better in order to manage the population growth that we're seeing.
Mr. Sharma, how difficult has it been for you to follow in the footsteps of an incredibly popular candidate who was basically deposed in quite a, I guess, brutal fashion? Have you found that people are coming up to you and saying that this is something they're unhappy about, or do you feel like you've got enough of a profile to overcome that?
Well, look, I would say Malcolm Turnbull was an incredibly well-liked and respected and regarded local member, minister and Prime Minister too. And frankly, people are disappointed at some of the debates in Canberra that have happened over the last several years, going back 10 years in fact, political instability in Canberra and politicians talking about themselves rather than the issues that matter to Australia. So that's why I've gotten into this, and this is what I hope to achieve. I hope to contribute to a more positive tone to the national debate in Canberra and help stabilise the Parliament.
Do you think the Liberal Party has anything to offer young people?
I think that the Liberal Party has plenty to offer young people. I mean, if you see the people who are out with me at the streets or at train stations or door knocking, there's a stack of young Liberal people. There's a volunteer down the road who takes the train from Marrickville every morning and then the bus to get down here. There's a lot of young people who are enthused about, the Liberal Party is all about opportunities, and I was the beneficiary of those sorts of opportunities that Australia provides. People who come from all walks of life, who are from humble backgrounds, from exotic backgrounds, from low means, and you can make something of yourself in Australia, and that's what I think makes Australia a great country, and that's why I'm standing.
And can I just say, in terms of young people, one of the greatest achievements of this coalition government has been the 1 million plus jobs that we have created since coming to office. And one of the greatest areas of jobs growth has been for young people. Last year, over 100,000 young people in Australia got a job. That was the greatest number since records were first kept. So when young people are entering into the workforce for the first time, they know that a coalition government, a Liberal and National government, with Scott Morrison at the helm, provides the best chance for them to get a good job. Now, the economy doesn't run on autopilot. Bill Shorten is promising $200 billion of new taxes, higher taxes on your income, higher taxes on your company, higher taxes on your property, higher taxes on your savings, and higher taxes on your electricity. That's what you'll get with Bill Shorten. But you'll also be giving the ACTU and the unions a seat at the cabinet table. The unions are getting ready for a feast at the cabinet table, and it will be the Australian taxpayer who's footing the bill. And under Bill Shorten, these union lawbreakers will become union lawmakers. And a re-regulation of the labour market, greater industrial disputation will do one thing. It will create less jobs and lower economic growth, and it will scare off investment. That's what you'll get with Bill Shorten. Our 27 years of consecutive economic growth is really something that must be protected and supported, and Bill Shorten and his high tax and spend agenda is a real threat to that growth.
Former Liberal leader John Hewson says the Liberals should get voted out of Wentworth because your party's not doing enough on climate change. What do you make of that? Is that helpful at the moment?
Well, I obviously disagree with John Hewson on this because, as I said very clearly, a vote for an independent here in Wentworth is as good as a vote for the Labor Party. It will bring uncertainty to the Parliament, and it will bring Bill Shorten one step closer to the lodge. Now, what we've done on climate is seen that emissions on a per capita and GDP basis have come down to their lowest level in 28 years. That's the record. Now, renewable energy investment has never been higher in Australia. Never been higher. I mean, 20% of Australian homes have solar panels on their roofs. We've seen large-scale renewable projects. We've got Snowy Hydro, which will be the largest pumped hydro facility in the Southern Hemisphere. These are coalition achievements. These are coalition initiatives. These are things that we should be proud of rather than the rhetoric and the reckless targets and policies of Labor and the Greens.
On the Drought Task Force in the
Yes.
banks, on the Drought Task Force in the banks, what actual power does the government have to demand bank behaviour and drought-affected customers?
Well, by providing this task force where the banks and the National Farmers Federation, my colleagues David Littleproud, Barnaby Joyce, John McVeigh and myself will be sitting around with the banks and working on initiatives to ensure access to finance for these drought-stricken communities. You see, they're going through a really tough time. While the economy is strong and employment and jobs growth is very strong, there are parts of this country where families and communities are doing it tough, and no tougher than in the drought-stricken areas, particularly of Queensland and New South Wales. That is why Scott Morrison, in his first press conference as Prime Minister, made that his number one priority. That was his first visit to a drought-stricken community. That's why we're putting $1.8 billion to work to help these communities. Now, when it comes to the task force, we will be sitting down with the banks, working through a number of options to ensure that these communities, these farmers, these local businesses that have been affected by the drought get the best possible go from the banks, because this is the wrong time to be hitting them with extra charges. This is the wrong time to be foreclosing on them. This is the wrong time to do anything which makes their viability as a business that much more difficult.
Mr. Sharma, just back on
about
climate
the Saudi
change.
journalists missing in Turkey. What action has the Australian government taken in relation to his disappearance?
Look, I'll leave that to the Foreign Minister. We'll take two more questions.
Mr. Sharma, just back on climate change. Do you think your party is doing enough there, or do you think there is more to do?
I think our party is doing enough, and I think we do have a good record on climate change. I mean, as the Treasurer said, emissions on a per capita basis, on a GDP basis, are at their lowest level in 28 years. We are on track to meet our Paris commitments, and I believe we will meet our Paris commitments. And we are also addressing energy affordability and energy reliability. And these are all important, measures of a sustainable and a coherent energy policy.
And can I just say, put some facts on the table here? It's an area, because I was the former Environment Minister and Energy Minister, I know a little bit about. The reality is that when the Labor Party was in government, they were on track to miss the 2020 target of emissions reduction. We're now on track to beat it by nearly 300 million tonnes. Now, 1 million tonnes of abatement is the equivalent of taking 300,000 cars off the road for a year. This is a very significant achievement. When it comes to our 2030 target, we've improved our task by 60% from when the Labor Party came to government, when the Labor Party was in government, since we have come to government. Now, Dave is absolutely right. The Labor Party have a reckless target of 50% renewables and 45% emissions reduction, and they haven't come clean with the Australian people to tell them what the real cost will be on their energy bills. We do know that when the Labor Party were last in government, energy prices doubled, and we know that they have a recipe and a plan and a policy which will see people pay more for their power, and that is not what Australians want. Last question.
Okay. So the IPCC report has said that we should phase out coal-fired power stations by 2030. Can I ask you both what your position is on?
Well, my position, I've said this publicly, is clear. Coal is an important part of the energy mix where we need to be technology agnostic, where we need to have fossil fuels playing a key role, coal and gas, and we also need to have a growing role for renewables. If we were to take coal out of the system, the lights would go out on the east coast of Australia overnight. It provides more than 60% of our power. When the Victorian Labor government forced the closure of Hazelwood, wholesale prices went up 80%. That was Labor's record. In South Australia, when the then Labor Weatherall government oversaw the closure of the Northern Power Station, wholesale prices went up 80%. So while it is a noble ambition for people to say, let's change our energy mix, what they have to bear in mind is the true cost to businesses and to families. And you survey any businesses along this strip in Wentworth and they will tell you that their power bills are an issue. And Labor will only send them up, and we are driving them down.
So you're saying they're wrong, that we're heading towards a catastrophe if we don't achieve that no coal by 2050?
That's their words, not ours.
Yes.
Our key message on climate change and emissions reduction is you need to do it in a way which is reduce your carbon footprint in a way that is cost effective and that pays paramount importance to what the impact on the businesses and the households that rely on their energy for their sustainability, for their viability, and we are very focused on the impact of any policies in this regard. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Okay, so that was Treasurer Josh Frydenberg holding a media conference there alongside the Liberal candidate for the seat of Wentworth, Dave Sharma. That by-election coming up in about a week and a half.